vitamin D and testosterone specifically. Those are two really, really important markers that determine mental clarity or brain fog, depending on how high or low they are.
Hello, hello, my friend. Welcome to the Gabby Rosalie podcast, a platform devoted to expanding our lives by connecting to the wisdom of the collective. Through relatable discussions on topics like communication, connection, leadership, science, and spirituality, we offer revolutionary perspectives and practical tools for creating positive change right here, right now. But I don't want this to be some stiff lecture hall-esque vibe, so we make it fun, raw, and real. With expert guests and relatable conversations, my goal is to inspire you to break through limitations and remember that it is possible to live a life you're excited to wake up to every day. Thank you for being here and enjoy the episode. Thank you for being here. We're going to take a deep breath. So Adam, my guest, I'll introduce you guys to in a second. I'm going to invite you to close your eyes. And if you're listening to this, I'm going to invite you to close your eyes as well. If you're driving, keep them open. But if you are listening in a place you can close your eyes, close your eyes. And we're going to settle into the body for a moment. And we're going to take a deep inhale into the belly, into the chest, hold at the top, and exhale. And we're going to do that one more time. Inhale to the belly. Inhale, chest. Hold. And exhale. I talk a lot about mental health. I talk a lot about spirituality on this podcast, but I think that the physical body is something I don't touch on enough. So today we are going to be talking about physical health, hormone health in particular, and how our hormones affect our moods, our energy levels, libido, and our overall well-being, really, how we understand them, optimize them to support our health and our happiness. So today we have Adam Woolard here to join us.
Hi guys, thank you so much for having me. That was a great intro, by the way. I feel like really settling in and being conscious of your breath is really calming. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so happy to be here. I'm a health coach and the vice president of business development at Blokes Men's Health and Joy Women's Wellness. Happy to be here.
Yeah. Hormone health is a little bit of a new industry, and it's something I know a little bit about, but it's something I'm very excited to pick the brain of somebody who works in full time. To be completely honest, the only hormones that I'm decently familiar with are like estrogen, testosterone, cortisol, and adrenaline. Like those are the big four. So I feel like I don't really have a deep understanding of how our hormones affect our health. So I want to start from the very, very wide scope, and I just want to hear a little bit about how our hormones play a role in our overall health and well-being.
So our hormones play a big part in a lot of different bodily processes. So for men specifically, testosterone is going to help us put on muscle and lose weight. It's going to help with our energy levels. It's going to help with our sexual function, our mood, a lot of different things. So if we have lower testosterone levels, it can really cause a lot of issues, lower libido, sexual dysfunction, weight gain. It can make us more irritable. Same with women. There are very similar side effects that happen whenever men and women have lower testosterone. Women don't need as much testosterone, but it's still really, really important to have an optimal level of testosterone if you're a woman as well. Same kind of symptoms. If you have low testosterone as a woman, you can, feel a little bit lethargic throughout the day. It takes you longer to recover from workouts. Your libido can take a hit. So there are a lot of different ways that low testosterone can affect you. Progesterone and estrogen play a bigger part in women. So the balance of those and the ratio of your progesterone to estrogen is really important as well if you're a woman. So at Joy and Blokes, we do hormone replacement therapy to help with those issues. A lot of times women will be on, birth control that gives you a little bit of dose of progestin, which is a synthetic hormone, and that can be really detrimental to your hormone health. So we kind of take a look at all of that. Whenever we intake female patients, we'll go through kind of a health history. We'll ask about any medications, and if you're on a birth control pill, that will kind of affect your treatment plan and how we give recommendations. So, that can really deplete your progesterone and estrogen. We typically advise for you to get off the hormonal birth control, because that's going to, in long term, it's going to really deplete you of certain hormones. So, progesterone and estrogen, if they're low, it can affect things like your sleep. It can affect your sexual function. Um, you can start to experience night sweats, hot flashes,
Yeah.
irregular periods, a lot of different things. So,
So
hormones play.
you talked about non-hormonal birth control. Is birth control really ever non-hormonal? Like what is your thought on that?
There is non-hormonal birth control. So like a copper IUD would be an example of that. I'm not an expert in female birth control, but
Sure.
um, there are non-hormonal options. Otherwise,
The
you're
only
using like.
reason I ask is because I feel like anything that alters your organic, chemical, or hormonal makeup would be something that would be a red flag for someone like you who's doing an intake where it's like, okay, you're making changes to your natural function, not saying it's, good or bad, but this is something that you have to take into consideration. And so then when you are applying okay, you're going to do this for your overall health, or we're going to supplement it with this, or we're going to hack it with this, I'm just curious, and it's not something that I've researched ever before, but I've always thought to myself, like, okay, if you're taking anything that does disrupt or alter your cycle in any way, is it really non-hormonal? You know what I mean?
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. That's a
Yeah.
really good point. And,
Yeah.
I'm not the one prescribing
Yeah.
certain medications, but I'm on the call with the clinician, and I hear these stories all the time. And
Yeah.
typically the recommendation is, do the old-fashioned way of, contraceptive. So
Yeah.
instead of being on birth control, you know, we typically recommend a more natural way of contraceptive means. But, you know, hormonal birth control is really being pushed on women, and I think that it's being overlooked, and there's more detriment to it than we realize.
Yeah, definitely. So I know that in your story, like you're super into jujitsu and CrossFit, if I'm correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Hmm.
Okay. So you're fit, but when you were going through a phase, I think it was your early 30s, I listened to a different podcast that you were on, and you were like, okay, I'm tired all the time. I had all this energy. What's going on? It wasn't a big dramatic health change. So can you talk to me a little bit about your own journey and how you made the connection to, I might want to take a look at my hormones?
Absolutely. Yeah. This happened when I was, early 30s. So I'm 37, 38 next month. And 31, 32 rolled around, and I felt like something was off. And we kind of always we know our body better than anybody, and when something's off, we can really tell. So I just felt like my energy took a hit. I feel like, in the gym, I just couldn't do as much, and it took me longer to recover. I feel like my libido took a hit. All these things were happening, and I didn't know why. So I was like, oh my gosh, I need to do something about this. So I went and got my blood work done. I just went to a primary care physician in California, and they only checked about 10 biomarkers, and their ranges of what they were checking were a lot lower and more narrow than what I've come to know now as optimal ranges.
Hmm.
And I didn't know that at the time. The primary care physician looked at my levels, said I was fine, said all my levels were in the standard range. And I just kind of left it at that, and I didn't do anything about it. Kind of come to find out after doing some research, they're comparing you to the average American, and the average American is largely sick and not healthy. So that was kind of the first red flag of like, oh, I need to go see a more holistic clinic
Yeah.
to get my labs done to make sure that my levels are actually optimal and standard. So it's really important to understand the distinction between conventional medicine and holistic medicine, and the ranges associated with those. So when I was in my mid 30s, I started, kind of going down this holistic rabbit hole, and I got my blood markers checked by a holistic lab. I went to Blokes, and they checked up to 67 biomarkers, so like really, really
Oh,
extensive
wow.
labs. And the ranges they were checking were a lot different from ones that I had previously experienced. So um, that was kind of the first step that I took to kind of take control of my health. And I found out that I was deficient in a lot of areas, testosterone being one of them. My testosterone was under 300, which At 299, you're still within a standard doctor's range, but that's very, very low as compared to, what we're looking at optimally. We
What is an
want you,
optimal number?
yeah, below, so we want you anywhere between 800 and 1200 typically.
Wow.
Now, if you're in the 500, 600, 700s and you don't have any symptoms, that's perfectly fine. But I was pretty symptomatic. So I started working on certain vitamins that help support my testosterone production. And that really got me to a place where I'm kind of hovering around the 600 range and feel so much better.
Yeah.
Going from 299 in terms of testosterone up to the 600s is a huge jump in terms of energy, libido, mental clarity, all that kind of stuff.
How long would you say that took for you to experience the effects of, okay, now you're in the 600 range?
It took me a good 6 months.
Okay.
On supplements and peptides alone, it can take a little bit longer for your body to fully adjust.
Sure.
If you were to go on a hormone replacement therapy, it happens a little bit quicker. So if you're either injecting testosterone or applying it via cream, that is a much quicker route. There are
Interesting.
some pros and cons to both of those. Supplements can take a little bit longer to have an effect. Whereas hormone replacement therapy, it is more of a long-term commitment because you're essentially telling your brain that it doesn't need a signal anymore to create hormones.
Yeah.
So your pituitary gland releases certain hormones that instruct the body on how much hormone to produce. So whenever you're either injecting or applying cream of one of these hormones, your brain will go into self-preservation mode. So your brain's not going to need a signal anymore if it has hormones coming in. So that tends to create this reliance on the hormones, and you need to stay on it in order to feel those effects. Now,
Yeah.
there are safe ways of coming off of hormones, and you can kind of regain that signaling process. But that is one of the quote unquote downsides of hormones. You need to be ready for a more long-term commitment.
Yeah, I think that's very helpful because I think that we're kind of getting the whole story from you that you guys have witnessed this kind of thing happen and you have preventative measures in place or things that people can do to wean off of it. I don't know if that's the right terminology, but really for a sustainable health approach and coming from, whether you're injecting and then you're going to continue to take a supplement instead or whatever that is. I think
Yep.
that's really important.
Yep.
So, so in the work that you do, what do you find that most people are coming to you saying, I've tried this and I don't know what else to do. So people who have tried, I don't know, maybe like different forms of exercise, or maybe they've already done the let me get 8 hours of sleep, let me get 9 hours of sleep. Like, when do you know that it might be a hormone issue?
It's a great question. You really only know if you get your blood work done. And that's something that was the biggest the biggest aha moment for me is like I'm throwing all of these things at my body because I'm having these certain symptoms. I would try every kind of supplement, every kind of regimen, every kind of workout routine, and I wasn't seeing any results. So until I actually got the physical results of my blood,
Yeah,
I didn't know what was going on, and I was essentially just throwing darts at a dartboard blind, and it wasn't doing anything. So that's the first thing you can do to really understand what's going on is get your blood work done. You'll see exactly where your testosterone is. You'll see exactly where your liver enzymes and your kidney markers are, where your red and white blood cells are, where your vitamin D is. So that's the first step, and it's hard to know what to put in your body if you don't know where your levels are to begin with.
definitely. And like you had said, you got your blood work done at your primary physician's office.
Yep.
Like, it's not something that you have to necessarily travel to California to go do. You can get it done, and then the results that are returned, you may have to venture out to a holistic doctor if you want the 67 versus the 10 or whatever. But a basic understanding of what your blood looks like and how your hormones look presently, that can be done very affordably, right?
Yes, yeah, for the most part. I mean, our labs, the entry level lab is $149. It's checking 47 biomarkers though, so it's really extensive.
Awesome.
Um, and not all clinics will be that extensive. Your primary care physician, like I said, they're not going to test a whole lot. And they're not really, most primary care physicians are not educated on hormone replacement therapy, peptide therapy, targeted supplements, that kind of thing. So it's not that they don't care.
Yeah.
It's just that, a lot of times they don't have the information or the resources to be able to provide that for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So we talked about breath in the beginning, and that was just very intuitive because honestly, I feel like I've been running around like crazy. You said you had meetings backed up until now. I'm like, okay, I needed a ground before we were able to actually have a good conscious conversation. So we mentioned the breath. We were able to connect to the breath. And the reason that I do that is because it is an anchor to the present moment. And so it's the ability to open up that channel and be present in the moment so that things can flow through. So we're talking about the three-part system being the mind, body, and spirit. And so we're talking about hormone health, which is part of the physical body. But I do believe that we are an interconnected system. So I don't know what your view is on, the three-part system and being connected in mind, body, and spirit, but how have you seen an effect? Maybe we'll think like cognitively even. Like, well, let's go to the mind first. How have you seen a difference in your cognitive function or maybe less, I don't know, brain fog or being able to focus since your hormonal journey?
Vitamin D and testosterone specifically. Those are two really, really important markers that determine mental clarity or brain fog, depending on how high or low they are. I had really bad brain fog, and that was in large part due to my low testosterone and my
What
vitamin
did
D.
what did brain fog look like for you?
Yeah,
I want
yeah,
people to be able to connect to this because I
yep.
know that there are people out there who we hear this term like brain fog. Okay, yeah, it's a little fuzzy, but what did that feel like for you?
It felt like I was constantly seeking for the right words to say. I was trying to gather my thoughts, and I would stumble over my words. I wouldn't know what to say. I feel
Okay.
like memory recall was really difficult. Those were kind of the main symptoms
Yeah.
of what I was experiencing in terms of brain fog. I would have a thought and I was like, oh, I'm ready to, speak this out into existence. And then it would go away. And I'm like, what was I thinking before? And I
Interesting.
had something
Okay.
on the tip of my tongue and it just kind of went away. That was kind of my experience of brain fog.
Yeah.
So that changed drastically whenever I kind of went down this holistic rabbit hole and started putting the right things in my body.
Mm.
I've also been meditating for about 13 years straight every single day. That helps with so many different aspects of my life. I've recently kind of given my life to Christ, so I'm a believer now, and I meditate on Scripture, which is kind of it looks a little bit different, but kind of the same concept. I shut everything in my mind off and I focus on one specific thing, which is what I've done for 13 years.
Love that.
And that has really, really changed um, just the quality of my life. We have so many thoughts throughout the day, and if we don't turn it off, it kind of takes control and it can lead us to act and do certain things. And I just wanted more control, and that's kind of why I started meditating. I wanted to be aware of the thoughts that were coming through my head and kind of separating myself from the thoughts. And that's easier said than done, but it's gotten a little bit easier since I've been doing it.
Yeah, definitely. And I appreciate you opening up and sharing that. I'm a fellow believer in Christ, and so that's beautiful to hear your testimony and how you've actually been able to meditate on scripture. I know that there are some systems of belief that think they are mutually exclusive, but I really do think that meditating on scripture can be such a powerful form of worship and of connection with God and of accessing what Jesus tells us we have access to all the time, which is the Holy Spirit, the kingdom of heaven that lives within. And so I think
Yeah.
that's really beautiful. And so the reason that I brought that up was in hopes to figure out if that was something that you kind of were into. And so I'm glad to hear that you kind of picked up where I was going with that. So now when we talk about the hormone health, how do you see things like low testosterone, low libido, brain fog, and the things that come about in our lives and in our physical systems
Mhm.
when we have poor hormone health? How does that affect I guess, our spiritual health or maybe our connection to that wisdom or our higher selves?
I think hormones play a big part in our energy, and if we don't have enough energy throughout the day, it can lead to, for me at least, a lower mood. I'm a little bit more irritable. I'm not as patient.
Mm.
So I think that plays a big role, especially in my spiritual health and, wanting to get up and exercise and eat right and go to church and do my, daily devotion in the morning. Like all of those things require energy. And I'm a very active person. And whenever I was lacking in certain areas in terms of my hormones, it made it hard to do all the things that I wanted to do.
Yeah.
So getting that squared away was hugely important because I wanted to do all these different things that make me feel my best. So that plays a big role in energy, and I think that that's one of the main reasons we really need to look into it.
Absolutely. And the reason I say that too is because it's not just that you're going to break out or you're going to be tired if you try to wake up at 7 a.m. It's like, no, this is going to affect how you show up in your relationships. It's going to show up in the way that you sit down and do your daily devotional or when you get on your laptop and you go to do things for work. And so I think that when you do start to look at what you are putting into the body and taking care of the body and doing an analysis on your body, like you would an audit for a company or something like that, because essentially that's what it is. And what I like to do on this podcast is I try to make all of these things very easy to understand for different groups of people. And so
Mhm.
if you are a business person and you speak in that kind of terminology, you're really grounded in the logic and the action, and maybe you're not so connected to the physical body or maybe the spiritual body. It is so important to look at it like you would a business or and taking care of something because what you don't pour into is not going to be sustained. And so that I think is a very, very important connection to make, as well as the relationships that are affected when you are at your best, when you are living in those higher vibrational states and you have your energy levels to carry through your day. So yeah, very
Absolutely.
important.
Yeah.
There's the Joy and Blokes men, and then there's Joy Women's Wellness. They're the same parent company, but they're different branches. Is there any like primary difference that you want to call out?
It really is the same company now. We actually merged the website. It was getting a little bit confusing. People, Blokes is very, very well recognized in the health and wellness space. So people hear of Blokes, they kind of know what that is, men's health. But Joy is growing considerably, and we want to make sure that people know about both Blokes and Joy. So the website is joyandblokes.com. But they are, brother and sister company. Women will sign up under Joy, men will sign up under Blokes, but it's the same process. So whether you're a male or a female patient, you'll kind of go through the same process. You'll fill out a health history form that gives us information on your health, any kind of medications you're on, your goals, all that kind of stuff. Once we have that, we'll have you choose from 3 different lab options, just depending on your goals and what you want to look at. Once you choose that, we'll send you in to get your blood work done. We'll receive those results back, and then we will schedule you for a call with both a health coach and a clinician. The time between we get your blood levels back and you see a clinician is around 3 days. So we're really, really quick with getting you scheduled and giving you information and treatment. And that's kind of what sets us apart. A lot of clinics will, man, you'll be waiting 2, 3 weeks, even months before seeing a clinician. So the process is the same with men and women. It's just 2 separate names so that we can distinguish where you are in the process.
Okay, very cool. Now, what about people who are listening to this and they feel like I'm too young or maybe I'm too old? Can we talk about age, I guess, a little bit?
Yeah, I don't think there's really a good time to start checking your blood levels. Wow, blood labs. I just combine labs and levels.
Labs and levels, yeah.
Um,
Levels.
but we with parental consent, we can check labs for I believe it's 17 years and up. But I would
Puberty is a
recommend
thing,
getting
right? You have to wait until like a certain point.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would recommend getting your labs checked when you're 18 and then, doing it every, if you're super healthy at 18, every year or so. But once you reach, 20s, 30s, I recommend getting it, every 6 months or so, just to kind of keep an eye on things. Um, and yeah, there are things that can pop up. You want to check your red and white blood cells just to make sure you don't have any infections going on or anything like that. So, and then too old, I would get your blood checked and forever. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
you're not really too old to get your blood checked. effect, especially if you start hormone replacement therapy. We reach a certain point to where our hormones just don't produce as much as they used to. Usually that starts around age 30. Men specifically can lose anywhere from 1 to 2% of testosterone a year starting at age 30. So as we've kind of already discussed, that can wreak havoc on a lot of different bodily systems
Yeah.
and, even, more so toward 50, 60, 70 years old. So
So, what do you think is different nowadays than 30, 40 years ago that's affecting testosterone levels and hormone levels like so rampantly?
I think it's a lot of things. I think it's environmental issues. We can talk about microplastics and metals and environmental exposure to different things. Also, food quality. I mean, there are so many additives and just crazy stuff put in our food, seed oils. All of that's contributing to our hormone health, and that's probably the main thing. Um, I mean, in terms of, men, remaining the head of the household, I don't want to get too much into, gender roles, but I think women are thankfully provided more opportunity now, and men can kind of take a back seat to that, which I don't know if that plays a big part in testosterone, but if the woman's a breadwinner, it might, cause issues with the family dynamic and all that kind of stuff. So that could play a part too, but I think it's mostly nutrition and environmental factors that's affecting that.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so action steps wise, if you are listening to this episode and you're like, wow, what Adam's talking about sounds like something I need, can you make it very easy for someone to stop listening to this episode and take next steps?
Yes, joyandblokes.com. There's going to be a little icon on the top of the website that I believe it says um, start health history form or something like that. But there's a little icon that tells you to fill out your information. Once you do that, that kind of starts the process. Everything's pretty automated from there. We'll kind of give you next steps after you complete that form. And like I said, that just gives us all your information so that we know how to move forward and what you're looking for. So that's the easiest way to go. And then, yeah, once we have your information, we kind of send you lab options.
Awesome. So important to remember if you are a person who has neglected your health in any way, shape, or form because you don't think it's a priority right now. I think, like Adam mentioned, it's $149 to get your labs and to test your blood and to just kind of see where you're at and have a little bit more of an understanding of what's going on inside of your body and then making decisions influenced by this information. It becomes so much easier and accessible because now you are able to make those connections. You have brought a degree of awareness to your body that gives you a lot more information to choose from A to B to C, whatever it is. Very, very helpful. And Adam, if there's anything else that you want to share about the business, about what you're working on right now, anything going on in your personal life that has some sort of connection, I would love to open up that space for you now.
Yeah, so in terms of Joy and Blokes, just really trying to get the word out. I mean, we're really, really efficient at getting people to a really healthy state. So we do everything from targeted supplements. So if we look at your labs, we'll come up with kind of a supplement pack that's specific to your needs. We have all kinds of peptides that help with different bodily systems. We have Samoralin, NAD, B12 injections, things for gut health. So there's a lot of different options that we're providing right now. In terms of personal, I'm getting married in a couple of months, so I'm really trying to, I don't know, I just want to go into marriage
Congrats.
feeling the best that I've ever felt.
Yeah.
So we're kind of in the throes of the planning process. Everything's pretty dialed in right now, but I just want to get to a place where I feel amazing and I feel my best and I can go into marriage in that state. So that's what I'm doing. I'm on a lot of supplements and some peptides and just trying to feel my best.
That's awesome. Yeah, congratulations. I know that that is a very exciting new chapter. And I know we didn't go into it, but touching on the whole idea of wanting to provide for your family and be that head of the household, I know that that can be a flame and an inspiration to be in the best shape of your life, to have your hormonal health be at the highest possible degree that it can be. So I think that that's really, really inspiring to hear, and very exciting. So for any of you guys that are listening to this episode and you want more information, Adam, what is your Instagram handle if they want to connect with you there?
It's ADMANDEW. It's Admandu. It's a little hard to remember sometimes, but yeah, that's where you can find me.
Awesome. I'll go ahead and I'll put that in the episode description. And then I will also put a link to the website as well. So if you guys want to check that out, visit the episode description. If you have any questions, feel free to, you can always email me, always DM me on Instagram, and always happy to connect with you guys. So Adam, thank you so much for sharing. This was really informative, helpful for me, and hopefully helpful for the people that were able to tune in.
Awesome. Thank you, Gabby. It was a pleasure.
All right. We'll see you guys next time on the Gabby Rosley podcast. Hold up now, y'all. Before you head out, I need to say thank you. Thank you for listening to this episode, and most importantly, thank you for making the conscious decision to invest in yourself and expand your mind, heart, and spirit. Because you showed up for you, you are helping others live better lives. Whether you know it or not, you are inspiring others daily. And if you're feeling fired up, keep the domino effect alive and share this episode with someone that you love. If you're feeling extra saucy, leave the show a review because it really, really helps me out. And come back and hang with me again sometime. New episodes every other Monday at 8 a.m. Keep shining your unique light. I see you, and I love you.